hold on to your thoughts there for us for a while. Mr. Abdullahi, you've listened to Professor Okigbo, and I noticed that you nodded your head a couple of times in agreement to whatever it was.
Well, I must confess that all the things he's saying, I agree with, because they're all well known. But I would shift a little bit and go to the practical issues. We're talking about educational delivery. You've got a lovely curriculum, and then you have a teacher that doesn't have the competence to actually do it. What are we going to do about this? I'll be very honest. I was somebody who was filled with a lot of hope when, for very many months, our children were made to sit at home while the lecturers bargained with the government on the funding of education. I also thought that the government will seize the initiative and actually use it as a bargaining chip to say, hey, we all have a problem here. It's not just throwing money at the problem, but we have a delivery problem as well, which consists also of the capabilities and capacities in the educational system. A study has been conducted which shows that about half of the teachers we have are not really qualified to teach in the classroom. Now, with all these beautiful concepts, curricula that we have in place, how are we really going to deliver if we don't have the competent hands to accomplish this?
So how are we supposed to start to address that, since we know that we want to achieve, there's something we want to achieve, and that is to make our students competent when they come out of school, to make them stand alone if they want to. They don't necessarily have to be employed by anybody.
There are several things I'm going to do to address this. The first is the partnership arrangements. In the past, they were called twinning arrangements. In some cases, whereby you had an institution overseas actually trying to mirror whatever it was able to achieve over there, over here. That way standards are maintained. They would exchange teaching methods. They would also exchange experiences. And by and large, you develop a student who, upon graduation, is globally competitive because he has acquired all those skills, abilities, and learnings that enable him to stand his own wherever he is. And it's interesting that Professor Okigbo actually studied here. So did I. Now, the interesting thing is that in those days, if you finished from Nigeria, you were looked upon with a lot of demand. But now there's a lot of rejection.
Yes, because you see, well, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know the period you're talking about.
All right.
At least at that time, we had vocational training schools, we had the teachers college, and the rest of that. We don't hear much about the technical colleges and the rest of it. We don't hear much about them anymore because it was still part of the education system anyway. And if you go to such a school, you'd learn the basic curriculum that every other person learns if you go to, a normal school at those technical colleges. But then you are even taught a particular skill. So when you come out, you're already ready to hit the market.
You see, you're quite right there, Harriet. Part of the problem is everybody thinks that the only education to be had is a university degree. The truth is, if you look at the marketplace today, the way the societal demands are coming up, a mason earns more than a graduate. And that's a skill. So if people are looking at becoming graduates merely as a meal ticket, then they've missed the boat, because there are other ways to make money with much less skill, much less sacrifice on the part of parents who have to pay a lot of money to send these kids to school. But coming again, you're touching on the issue of alternative educational methods and institutions. It's part of this holistic problem that I had been talking about, that we seem to have defined education in far too narrow a sense. It cannot just be university education alone. I'll tell you, in many of the countries that have developed technologically, you do find that they have equal respect for each of these areas, these disciplines. And so you have a branch where you have engineering, And it is appreciated that engineers are required, the people who are going to design, conceptualize, and try and come up with the utilization of principles to solve particular problems. But who actually build the machines? Who actually translate all these sound concepts into working models? They are the technologists, the kind of people you find in colleges of technology. And that's why I was so distressed some years back when I learned that the polytechnics were struggling to become degree awarding institutions, because then we would not have the right institutions to address this other pressing need for a country that is evolving technologically, or at least aspires to evolve technologically.
But then, it also depends on the individual who is going to be teaching and impacting to the students. But just hold on to your thoughts. And when we come back, we'll come back to that. Professor Okigbo, you're also going to help to react to this as well. But let's quickly catch our breath and we'll come back and continue this conversation. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television, and we're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching the midweek edition of Business Morning on Channels Television, and we're broadcasting live from Lagos, Nigeria. Our focus on the program in the last couple of minutes has been on education and how we can revamp Nigeria's education for sustainable economic development. And as we know, the 20th Nigerian Economic Summit begins next week, and it's going to be focusing on education, and we're going to have a lot of key players at that summit talking about how education can actually be moved from where it is right now and make us more competitive globally. And having this conversation with me in the last couple of minutes have been two gentlemen, a professor from the University of Colorado Boulder, U.S.A., Austin Okigbo, joins us via Skype, and Ibrahim Abdullahi is a human capital development expert and Chief Executive Officer of Talentscape Human Capital Management. He's here with me in the studios. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for staying with us.
Thank you.
Professor Okigbo, let me come to you on this one. Just before we went on that quick break, I mentioned that we're going to come back and talk about the role of teachers in all of this. A lot of times it seems as if teaching is a last resort for some people because they can't find a job. And so because they feel that, after all, I've gone to school and I know the basics, I can teach anybody. And so at the end of the day, they don't have so much to impact on the students that they're actually talking to. You're a professor, you've taught here, and you're a professor also there in your research university. As much as possible, I know that you've come in contact with people who have this desire to teach, and there are actually some that don't have the desire to teach. Why is there such a problem in terms of properly training people who actually have this desire to be teachers, and why aren't they always encouraged to continue the profession? Because as soon as they see a better opportunity, probably to work in another field outside of teaching, they take that without even batting an eyelid.
Let me tell you this, Harriet, and to the viewers. As a matter of fact, if there is anything that Nigeria shares in common with the United States, to the best of my experience, having trained in Nigeria and taught in Nigeria and trained and taught here, it is this problem of having people coming into the workforce and the teaching career without a passion, as well as those who have the passion not being well encouraged and well remunerated. It seems that the problem is every time, is more especially in the Nigerian system, teachers are always the football for politicians. I remember when I was in elementary school in Nigeria some years ago, when we had to stay at home for almost a whole term because our teachers were on strike. And you keep wondering, why is it that whenever politicians want to cut pays and withhold pays, is always the teachers that they pick on? Well, what that does policy-wise and in terms of what implication it has for us in terms of our educational system is teachers are no longer respected, and people don't have the passion anymore to go into teaching career. There is no incentive. And even those who have the passion, it becomes de-incentivized for them. But let me take you back to the conversation that Mr. Abdullahi the point that Mr. Abdullahi was making some moment ago, and that's with regards to training. One thing that we did in our education system that I think, and I keep thinking about it every now and then, I think it has very serious implications on the negative side for us, is when we eliminated teacher training colleges. Because primary education, which is what you would consider kindergarten through elementary 6 or primary 6, a teacher maintains one classroom. The teachers in the primary education are not subject-based teachers. They run classrooms, and they lay the foundation. So they are supposed to be all-rounded, people who can teach English at that level, teach mathematics, teach elementary science, teach social studies, and all of that. Now, what we have today, we got rid of teacher training education. We replaced them with NCE, that we're supposed to be preparing people who are specialized in specific subjects to teach at high school, secondary school level, where their focus is on individual subjects. Now, you have somebody who, for instance, went to a college of education, got the, NCE in, let's say, Igbo language or Yoruba language or history, and then you introduce that person in an elementary school environment, and he has no background and preparation for how to handle that level of training of students. And then he or she is also struggling with certain subjects such as mathematics and sciences. Thereby, the implication is that you have students who do not have the right foundation moving into secondary school. And by the time they finish secondary school, JS1 through SS3, they are very deficient in these subjects. So they are not even well prepared to pursue higher training. They are not even well prepared. Even if they want to go into technical schools, they don't have the requisite skills to pursue technical training. That's one of the things in implementing our 6334 system where we got it wrong. And I keep saying it, I have to reiterate that very point again. The problem is not the system and how it is conceptualized, it's the process and the policies that we are creating around it in terms of implementation. But also the social component of it with regards to how we treat our teachers. If we really want to think about national development, and if we recognize that education is key to sustainable national development, then we also have to recognize that teachers are an important component of that very process and the possibility of that realization.